And so what I want, and what I think my colleagues want on both sides of the aisle, is to understand and believe that we're not having private discussions about relaxing sanctions, that we're showing the same kind of strength that past presidents have shown when enemies attack the United States of America. And you just committed to Senator Portman that you believe more sanctions are needed. And so are we to expect in the coming days that we will be applying the sanctions that the Senate has provided this president in a bipartisan way to hold Russia accountable and show them that there'll be a cost for their attacks on this nation?
Sir, I think this administration's record, over 200 sanctions, 200 sanctions, Senator, is reflective of this administration's steadfastness with respect to our willingness to push back against Russia. I think it's unquestioned. You just spoke for coming on 7 minutes about a whole litany of things political. Let me give you America's foreign policy.
Well, sir,
200 plus sanctions.
Clearly there's been divisions in the administration if Nikki Haley is talking about sanctions on one day and then you're not putting them on the next day.
Senator, there's vigorous debate in this administration on lots of things. There's no doubt about that. The president didn't hire a single shrinking violet, not one of us. And we often disagree about things. There's no doubt about that. And sometimes we prevail, and sometimes we don't. The president calls the ball, and the president called the ball over 200 times to sanction Russian entities. That's pretty strong.
The president is not using the tools that the United States Senate.
We've used CATSA. We've complied with CATSA. We will continue to comply with CATSA. I put this administration's work on sanctions against Russia. Let's just rack and stack.
Then I'll conclude.
For the last 8 years,
Mr. Chairman, I want to conclude with entering into the record the President of the United States statements on CATSA, and I will read them and put the whole statement in the record. This is what he said on the day CATSA was introduced. Since the bill was first introduced, I've expressed concerns to Congress about the many ways it improperly encroaches executive power, disadvantages our company, and hurts the interests of this nation. Still, the bill is seriously flawed, particularly because it encroaches on an executive branch's authority. Congress should not even negotiate a health care bill after 7 years. By limiting the executive ability's authority, this bill makes it harder for the United States to strike good deals.
I actually agree with each of the statements.
The framers of the Constitution put the foreign affairs. So, well, you didn't agree with it when you were talking to him. I could read your words back about how great this CATSA deal is. I put this in the record, and I finished my comments just simply by saying this is not a president that's using the tools. This is not a president that's strong against Russia. This is not a president that is standing up against people that are doing ongoing attacks on the United States of America that are continuing at this moment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Menendez.
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me thank the Secretary for being here, but I must say that after nearly 3 hours, here's my takeaways. This administration is increasingly not transparent. It's not transparent as to what takes place at these summits. It's not transparent in terms of I hear that there's an effort not to have readouts when the president has conversations with foreign leaders, which has historically been the case. There's increasing less number of briefings. We haven't still had a briefing on North Korea in a classified setting nearly 2 months afterwards. So what I took away is that as it relates to North Korea, we have no agreements on anything. The best I can glean is that they understand what we mean by denuclearization, but they have not agreed to that definition. I really don't believe, Mr. Secretary, you know what happened during the President's 2+ hour conversation with President Putin. And I really don't know much more about the summit after sitting here for 3 hours than I did before. I want to say to you, I want you to think about the suggestion that what the President says is not the policy of the United States. When the President speaks, can
I clean that up, Senator? You're right, I misspoke.
If you want to clean it up, because
I'd love to.
When he speaks, that is the policy of the United States.
I'd love to, Senator. Yeah. I'd love the chance to do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I misspoke. It is the case. Right. The President calls the ball. His statements are, in fact, policy, but it's the case that when all of us speak, in informal settings in response to questions, we're not covering the full gamut of things that impact the world. That's what I intended to say. I saw the glee on your side walking away trying to make a political point from that. That's silliness. This president runs this government. His statements are in fact U.S. policy.
So now we understand that when the president speaks, it is the policy of the United States. Senator, you've
seen these policies. 200+ sanctions. You've seen them, Senator.
I'm not asking you a question, Mr.
Senator,
Secretary.
I understand. I've now been here 3 hours. And you've got a political soliloquy.
No, you know what? I've listened to your political soliloquy as a Secretary of State sitting at that table, demeaning some members here because you said that Senator Shaheen believes more in the Russian defense ministry. She was quoting them only because we don't know what our own government is saying. So please don't talk to me about politics. Want to talk about politics? If President Obama did what President Trump did in Helsinki, I'd be peeling you off the Capitol ceiling. Please. So here's the point. When the president speaks, it is the policy of the United States. And so when he says, in one respect, I applaud this declaration about Crimea, but then he goes and says that Russia should join the G7. Well, the reason Russia's not in the G7 is because they invaded Ukraine. So which is the policy? Because when the president speaks, it is the policy. And I must say, sir, when you speak around the world, people believe that what you say is a reflection of the policy of the United States. So I want to close by saying one thing I heard here today that I can agree with you is that we need more sanctions, and I look forward to working with the chairman, Senator Graham, and others who are interested in this regard. Hopefully we can come together in common cause to push back on Russia on sanctions that we can pursue. And secondly, I want to reiterate, I believe that it is rightful for the members of this committee, even if it's in a classified setting, to speak to the translator and or to see her notes, because that's the only way we will know what truly transpired.
Would you like to give any response?
Not a word.
You had earlier tried to lay out the things the administration was doing relative to the election and were cut off. Would you like to do that in a public setting?
I'm just fine, Senator. I think I've had the opportunity to respond adequately. I appreciate you having been so gracious to have permitted me to do that.
And we had some exchange relative to a classified briefing. Let me say this, I know you're busy. And
happy to try and find a time that works for everyone to do that, as I think I committed to another senator. Yep.
We'll keep the record open until the close of business tomorrow for written questions. I know you've got a lot to do. To the extent your staff could help answer those questions as briefly as they could, that would be most helpful. I appreciate you coming before us today. And with that, the meeting's adjourned.
But at the same time, it doesn't very much at all.